I'm running out of space in this notebook.
Oh my. Oh, don't get a new one yet. I have
What if I
plans.
did?
Oh, you ready to? Fine. Well, I'll get you a new one for next year. Anyway, welcome back to the Movie Wall
What? Oh,
Marathon. I'm Andrew. Yeah, we're going.
hi,
Introduce yourself, then go get your new journal.
I'm Mac, and I'll be right back.
Yep. So we are still in our Superman marathon. We are on Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Came out July 24th, 1987. Director is Sidney J. Furie. Oh, Sydney. And then yeah, well, of course we got our Christopher Reeve and our Gene Hackman and our Margot Kidder. We've also got Mark Pillow as Nuclear Man. That's literally his last name
What
is
a
Pillow.
name.
Mark
What a name.
Pillow. And then of course a bunch of our returning folks. So, Perry White and Jimmy. You got the exact same thing, or
It's a different. It's clearly
oh,
different, man. They're different colors. You're an artist. You should know this.
The way you held it, it looked like you had one open and like you were showing me the same. Okay,
No.
that is cool. Don't get one after that, okay? I have plans.
All right. All right.
Anyway, yeah, Superman Quest for Peace.
Mm-hmm. Which, like, the title is super cheesy, and I feel like that is reflected in certain aspects of this film.
Yeah. I don't even have the energy to shit on this. It feels honestly like making fun of a kid with a limp or something, like with a lazy eye and a limp whose parents just got divorced.
Yeah.
Like it feels bad to dog on it, but like it's so bad. It's the opening feels like a bad made for TV movie. Like we've been making fun of the long openings, and rightly so. But the first one is so dramatic and so cinematic, and this is just so awful. And they like I know that they when you don't have the budget, you don't have the budget. That's not the movie's fault, that's the studio's fault. And I believe from the documentary, oh, now I'm confused. It's either this or Planet of the Apes or both, where the budget got cut in half every sequel. It's pretty evident in both those franchises, so it could honestly be both. I don't recall exactly. But it's so... They use that same flying shot over and over and over and over and over again.
You can see the wires in a lot of the scenes where people are flying.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like sort of egregious wire use in this film. It's sort of like the wires are the one trick we can afford or understand, and so we're going to use them every time we want to do something. The people who were just like spinning in circles because the villain pointed at them.
Yeah. So last week, though, real quick, we talked about there were some things we liked. We talked about Lana and the chemistry between those two, and the potential that was set up with like the different ideas that were presented in Superman 3 with maybe a red kryptonite plot or a robot villain. Do you have anything about this movie you like?
A few things.
Okay,
but they almost all exist in the first act, and then it just kind of gets worse.
Gotcha. What do you got? Because I have maybe one thing now that I remember. I have one thing, and it's kind of inconsequential.
I like that the film consciously makes an effort to point toward the Earth as a global whole rather than like different nations. It's clearly a political statement, but it's one that feels very positive, like one that I don't mind necessarily. Like we begin with a Russian astronaut in space singing an American song in Russian, and then Superman saves him when something goes wrong. There's a female astronaut up there too, and he speaks to them in Russian, and then he goes home and he has to deal with his personal stuff, which like I felt like these two opening scenes were actually pretty strong. I don't know if they really did anything for the film overall, because as it ends up, they didn't really focus on what I thought they were going to end up focusing on based off these two scenes. But I do feel like these two scenes could be opening for a very interesting Superman film, where like the first scene with the Russian astronauts indicates we're going to be focusing on how the Earth as a planet is trying to learn to cooperate, right? Which feels kind of relevant to the time this movie is being made, as well as the fact that like we're dealing with Superman, who does view the Earth as kind of a unified whole, while he would still understand the divisions and splits within it because he grew up on the planet too. But he has like a different perspective because he does know at least a little bit about Krypton, and he knows that he's a visitor to the planet Earth, not just like he's not a, traditional immigrant, we'll say. And then we also get a really cool setup with the family farm where he sort of like, puts his foot down with the realtor. He's like, I want this to be sold to someone who's going to care for it as a farm. I want it to stay a family farm. He's resisting like conglomerate takeover of land, corporate takeover of land. I don't really know that anyone was going to put a mall or anything on top of Ma and Pa's farm out in the middle of Kansas, but they might have put a factory or some sort of industrial thing on it. And so that one actually feels kind of resonant with the fact that we are talking about warmongers and corporations in this movie that, they don't have the people's interest in mind. They just have greed in mind. And the way that companies buy up land and harm the resources of the land is resonant with that. So there's at least a little bit of that used. It just is largely ignored for the most part. We also get Clark saying goodbye to Ma and Pa's farm at the same time that we get him saying goodbye to his Kryptonian pod. Like it destroys, right? He makes the choice to sort of like destroy it because he can't really take it with him. And so it sets up an identity crisis for him in this film, in the sense that he feels like he's not anchored to his Earth heritage or his Kryptonian heritage, maybe. But then they don't really do anything with that.
Yeah,
it kind of maybe comes into play with the nuclear thing, but it doesn't really go anywhere.
The extra green glowing crystal MacGuffin thing I think is dumb. Like, that comes out of nowhere.
Agreed.
It doesn't make any sense. Also, let's be real. Would the space pod still be there? Why isn't it in the Fortress of Solitude? You've been Superman for years now. Like,
and it's not like anyone's watching the farm. He can just take that out of the barn basement.
Right. He flew there,
go.
Like, I mean, it's not like he took a bus there. He wasn't with Jimmy this time. So, yeah, I just... keep going if you got more.
I like those setups, and then I'm like profoundly disappointed that they aren't efficiently used. I think it continues to resonate with the Daily Planet takeover. I felt like they had a lot of decently solid things to say in terms of like thesis about like again, corporations and greed taking over and disrupting
journalistic
a natural
integrity.
Resource. Yeah, journalistic integrity is a big thing. I love the way they're managed to make those. I mean, it's a little cartoonish, but they're able to make those arguments in a way that I feel like is a simplification of what would actually happen. Like, it's not necessarily that people would have that exact conversation in their room where they'd be like, you're not going to get my, integrity from me. But that is the conflict that is playing out in those situations, right? Journalists leave once once their company changes hands all the time because they feel like the integrity of their job is at stake, and journalists who are good journalists do care about the truth. So I don't really have any notes on that. I do have notes on Lacey, though, because they tried to do a Lana thing with Lacey in the sense that both Lana and Lacey like Clark, and through liking Clark, their lives are actually improved. In this case, Lacey becomes a better person because she likes who Clark is, and and like, as rushed as that arc is, I do feel like it was maybe kind of an interesting idea. But because, especially in this film, she is very clearly a competing love interest for Lois, and Lois has a very confusing character arc about whether or not she knows Clark is Superman.
I'm glad you said, because I wasn't sure either.
Like, the moment where Clark walks off the balcony with her and reveals that he is Superman.
I hated it. It was so...
I don't know how to feel about it, because I kind of like the turnaround where, like, Lois tried to force Clark to reveal that he's Superman by falling off a building. In this instance, he like gives her a little fright and reveals that he's Superman.
I don't. Oh,
the thing that happens afterward is that it totally kind of ruins anything that maybe kind of worked there. Because my first thought was, I'm a little torn. I'm hoping for some sort of explanation conversation. And the conversation they have afterward almost kind of attempts to explain it, where he's like, I just can't do this without you. And then it turns out that she remembers everything now. And for some reason, that's enough of a problem that he has to erase her memory again. So it's almost like he
Again.
did all that for nothing, and it was just manipulative for him to like need
I
a moment
know,
with her and
like
then erase her memory.
just it's
And
so weirdly objectifying. She's just this
yes,
thing, this toy that he gets to use. He talks to, erases her memory like whenever he wants. I don't like it. It's
and then
gross and I don't like it.
later they have a conversation. Lois has a conversation with Clark that feels like a veiled "I know who
Yeah.
you are" moment. And it's
It's
not clear if she just remembers or if she made the connection in the doorway when she says, like, I knew it, like,
right.
it,
It's so
but then later
confused.
she doesn't, like, her behavior doesn't change. So is it implying that she kind of knew the whole time? But then, like, that means the memory wipe wouldn't matter at all.
Right. And she's like, I always
What?
know when Superman's in danger. It's okay, then why are you at Clark Kent's place? Are you saying you know or don't? Like, what are we
And I feel
saying?
like the nail in the coffin is that she leaves the cape with
Uh huh.
Clark.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for her to believe that Clark, as a reporter, would have any more of a relationship with Superman than she
Right.
would.
But
So
somehow he
the only reason
does.
to leave the cape with him is if she feels like he needs it.
Yeah. It's either they're saying that she knows and they're doing a very poor job of it, or they're honestly saying that Lois Lane thinks that Clark Kent has a better chance, while ill, of getting in contact with Superman, who is missing in this instance.
Yeah. Played it as more of like a here's a talisman of hope. Maybe they could have gotten away with that, but it's not how the scene is played. She's very much like slyly indicating that everything she's saying to Clark about Superman is what she wants him to hear about himself, which only really works in this context if he is Superman, if she thinks he is Superman. And I honestly, Lacey, as rough of a character as she is, once again highlights the flaw that Lois doesn't seem interested in Clark. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because
But she's
Lacey,
aware of all the
again,
reasons why everyone else is into Clark.
yes, and feels weirdly possessive over him or jealous of him, but
This time she's
doesn't
wingmanning him at the same time, giving him tips on
yeah.
what to say and what to do. And I honestly, we get to a point where Clark does seem to be slightly playing along with the idea that he's on a date with Lacey.
Mhm,
And for the, I don't
mhm.
know, the average viewer of 87, it's like, oh, ha 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 ha, look at this man having to juggle this double date. Isn't this just the funniest thing ever? It's gross, dude. You're dating
It's
two women
manipulative
at the same
at
time.
the
It's
same
like
time.
it's not cute, it's not fun. It's
It
not
would be
also a
more
requirement.
ethical to
Like
cancel on one of
one
them,
of one of you
like
just has to say you're sick. That's all you have
uh-huh,
to do. That's it.
uh-huh.
That's it. And your other persona, who is the bumbling fool, you could say you twisted your ankle stepping off the goddamn sidewalk. That's all you had to do. It's not
Mm-hmm.
fun. I don't like it.
100% agree.
It's
Especially
just
since Clark doesn't seem to really return Lacey's favor, but it's very
yeah,
clear that Lacey does like him. Like,
right.
it would be better for him to make some sort of excuse
Uh-huh.
than it would be for him to
Right.
play along in this scene.
Exactly. And like also like what is your plan, dude? Like do you know when it comes down to dinner time, one of you is going to have to leave. So why are you messing with these two ladies
It's
and their
honestly
time?
more suspicious to try and play it out than it is to make excuses as one of you.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
because
just
like it's weirder to have both people be saying, "Yeah, I'm going to be there," and both people are in the apartment but never
uh-huh.
in the apartment in the same room at the same time. That's
Right.
weirder.
You got
That's
two people looking
weirder.
directly at your face. Like we're playing this really close to the chest. It's yeah, it's inconsiderate,
Yeah.
honestly, as well as what it is. It's just gross. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I don't think it's fun. And I feel that way for honestly the majority of the movie. I honestly hate that Luthor is back.
Mhm.
Even in the bad movies, I think he's the worst part of these movies. It's so weird that a bald man would feel so insecure about his baldness that he would get a wig, but the wig is styled to look like a balding man. Because Gene Hackman is clearly balding now. It's not. Okay. the quote unquote wig is not giving us full coverage. You know, like it's a strange choice, Gene. Just fucking shave it. But he's back, and his theme is so cartoonish, and I don't like it. His little nephew is a pain in the ass, and I don't love him. And his plan, like, if I had a nickel for every time Lex Luthor calls himself a genius in one movie, I'd have like $1.50, which is like not a lot when you think about money, but as far as nickels go, that's too many nickels. And it's just it's yeah. The one thing
Yeah.
I like about this movie is Superman wanting to be on a global stage and interacting in bigger things beyond cats and trees and falling planes. I really like those Superman stories. I don't remember exactly what it is. There's a really good comic I think Alex Ross illustrated where like Superman just kind of realizes, like, you know, in a much better, of course, Superman way, fuck this shit. If people are starving all over the world, I'm gonna feed them. I don't care what the governments say. And there's like a lot of nuance to it. And this movie introduces this idea, and I really, really, really like it. And not only is the movie then shit, the ending undermines it, and I don't like that. Like genuinely, like not playing, not ranting. I don't like how Superman backtracks and says it's not my place actually, because like the way he words it, it's not my place to enforce peace on the world, is like a way of referencing, you know, the Justice Lords or the Injustice Superman of like forcing his like from Superman's perspective, humanity is a group of slightly hairless lemurs with nuclear weapons that have done nothing good with them, and he has the power to remove them. Why the hell wouldn't you? I see nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing. Especially when it's across the board. I don't love that he puts it into a giant fish net. That could have been done in a way that was more visually interesting.
Hilarious.
Sure.
I laughed out loud. I was like, what is that?
It's insane. But the idea of him wanting to interact on a more global scale, and, you know, he says, you know, Madam whoever, secretary, councilwoman, whoever, I don't represent any country. Like, I didn't know any of these classic movies actually had lines like that. Like, I thought it was kind of cool that the current Superman has lines like that in the trailer. I thought that was a very modern idea. So that was fun, and then it goes nowhere, and then it's undermined in the end. So what are you saying, Soups? Like if Russia or US or anyone decides to make nuclear weapons again and starts using them, are you gonna not interfere? Because I doubt it. So I don't know. I just feel like in a different universe or with a different writer, there's something that could have been explored here, because there are lots of stories in which Superman decides he wants to enforce ideas or a kind of peace where it goes too far into one way or the other, gets close to fascism or dictatorship or overreach. I don't think this was an example of that, especially with the way the world reacted. And so to then decide, you know what, it's not a good thing that I did that. Nothing in this movie illustrated that, Superman. Like, none of the negative outcomes were directly because of that. Like, because Luthor has the plan to do that for some reason before Soups does any of this. So, it's just, yeah, that's the only thing I like. The rest of this, I think, is a hot pile of garbage.
I like the conversation they're starting with the nuclear weapons, but I will say I feel like it's a little bit less clear-cut than he has the ability to do so, therefore he should. He, like, the whole thing with Superman is about how far does he go with his power, because if he is truly a good man with infinite ability, then is he obligated to take over so that he can ensure peace and justice in the world? And there is an argument to be made that Injustice Superman is just a bad version of that. Whereas if Superman stayed truly good and created some sort of kingdom with him at as the king, there's an argument to be made that that could be a happy society. But the question is whether or not he should. is it ethical for him to make decisions like that? And I think this is in conversation with things like the Prime Directive from Star Trek, where if we do not let people make their own mistakes, then they will not learn the lessons they need to learn to progress in society. This is going to be so nerdy. I was actually reading essays on Utopia by Thomas More earlier today, and they happened to talk about how a utopia is often also a dictatorship, in the sense that there has to be a force of will that overcomes what is naturally present or what is already present to carve out a society that is, at least in some way or another, utopian. It does not exist in nature. Utopias, if you just let things happen, we do not have utopia, because that's arguably the situation that we find ourselves in today. Like, we are doing our best in small little units and with checks and balances, and it's not working. And the basic conclusion, I mean, it's very simplistic to boil it down to this, but the basic conclusion was that utopia is a thing that we have to have in the same way that we need to have hope or we need to have optimism, but we also need to be very aware of like the flaws and the weaknesses in the system, and we also be very aware of what we're asking for. You know, like a person who, like, any utopia that you can possibly think of is not a society where a person who is truly like all about liberty would be happy, because you cannot make certain types of decisions in a utopia because it would create a society that is not utopic. So like it's very difficult to sort of like boil down, but that's kind of the idea, right? And so Superman, being an all, like, more or less all powerful individual who has the benefit of a culture that was more advanced than the cultures of the United States, the world, Earth, does he have the right to make decisions about what our societies can do? And nuclear warfare is an interesting one to have this conversation on, because most people in the world are not happy about the fact that nukes exist. My thought was, I don't like the fact that Superman is making decisions for all of humanity, and he's unilaterally making those decisions. The only person who decided that Supes should destroy the bombs was him, and you could argue, like, that kid, right?
Yeah.
So it was a personal decision that Superman made that he then executed. It had nothing to do with approval from any sort of government, any sort of governing body, any sort of democracy. It was just a personal decision that Superman made. And I'm not crazy that Superman made that decision. At the same time, if I were given a button that would just poof away all the nukes in the world, not nuclear power, but all weapon nukes, which is essentially the conversation that we're trying to have here, I would feel ethically bound to do it.
So that's where I come from when it comes to Superman conversations like this. And also, we have to consider this was during the Cold War, so there's a lot of current commentary on it. But I can't help but superimpose the "with great power comes great responsibility" thing. And when you apply that to Superman, the reach of his responsibility is far larger. So if something goes awry that he could have stopped and then just doesn't, like, so that's where I'm like, yeah, if you've got a bunch of idiots messing with these things that do nothing but destroy cities, like, because they have a similar kind of conversation in Injustice, right? Mr. Terrific and Supes, at least in the cartoon, he talks about how he wants to get rid of guns. And Mr. Terrific, I think, actually makes a really dumb comparison to cigarettes. Not the same, but whatever. It's a different situation. That's not what he's doing here, Like, he's not forcing, really, I think, an idea, an ideology, or he's simply, as you put, maybe, a species of a very advanced place being like, hey, little hairless lemurs, you guys aren't ready for this. You're really not. And the few times you've used it, it's been bad. So since I can take it away from you, I'm going to. So all this time and money you're wasting bickering about whether or not you're going to be second or first place and who can do better blowing up the other half of the world, we're just going to take a step back from that, I think. Like, I'm all for that. And so him then at the end of the movie being like, you know what? No, I have no right to do that. If anything, it's wrong of me to do that. I'm just going to sit back and wait for you to start firing them, I guess, and then I can, like, that I find dumb. But the farther into that you go, we get into who's right, Khonshu or Aminet, or whatever that crocodile-headed god in Moon Knight's name was. Anyway,
the end where he sort of like walks back a little bit, I felt like what they were trying to say was that in Superman's opinion now at the end of the film versus the beginning of the film, he kind of sees that humanity will find a way to create war regardless of his involvement, and so he's not going to try and like eliminate war so much as just be Superman and help people when the situation gets bad. But it was not clearly worded, and I do not feel like any of the plot points of the actual story highlight any of that. Like, the fact that the villain is called Nuclear Man is like, okay, but what he does is not at all comparable to a nuclear bomb. Like, there's no real allegory here other than the fact that there was another arguably weapon of mass destruction made through nuclear power, and like it was created by a guy who wanted to restart war. So like maybe there's kind of a stretchable allegory here in terms of like we got rid of all the nukes, but then the minute we did that, somebody turned around and made another kind of dangerous weapon. But it's not a well-made point by any means. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not good.
No, it's not. And I guess we kind of have to move on because we could talk about this probably the whole episode because, you know, there's a lot of interesting Star Trek style questions here. But since you did mention it, that's a good segue into Nuclear Man, which is just so incredibly dumb.
Hopes when I saw like the birth scene, I guess. Because it looks really cool.
And for a second, it looks cool. And the voice effect in the beginning is almost cool as well.
I didn't like that at all.
The very first time he talked, I liked it. Because it felt imposing and powerful. And then it was, for some reason, Luthor's voice. So, is this guy a mixture of Luthor and Superman?
I was very unclear on that.
Like Superboy and Young Justice and... like,
there were better versions of the story, but maybe this is where it kind of started.
I don't know. And also, why does throwing your little biological goo into the sun do this? Like, I almost enjoy
the idea that you could like create a little proto-human mass, stick it in a briefcase
too, as well.
Yeah, put it in a briefcase, strap it to a missile, and shoot it into the sun, and that would create a person?
Yeah. With claws.
Super weird.
I almost liked that they included that I almost like that he includes that there's a computer in the box that can generate a costume. I almost like that attention to detail. Don't love the design of the suit and the weird gold jock strap that we have on that part of the, you know, whatever. And then I don't think this was fully thought through. Because why would you make a movie in which you make Superman's weakness a guy who was born of the thing that gives him his powers? Like, oh, because it's radiation. Like, yeah, well, we've kind of set up that. I mean, what do you think it is that's powering Superman from the sun? You know, heat? No, it's like it's the radiation of the sun. So,
and
what are you doing?
Like, the weakness of Nuclear Man simply being
in
like
the shade,
in the shadow.
But he also generates his own heat
to shut him down is to put him at a spot where he has no direct sunlight. Are you kidding me?
Seriously?
Why wouldn't you just keep him trapped in the elevator for all time? Seal the elevator.
I know. I
put
thought
it
that
in
was a
a
really cool way to
cage,
beat
call
him
it a
almost,
day.
but then he just comes out
Yeah.
again.
And
I thought he
you
was
put
going to
him on
throw the
moon,
elevator
and
on the dark side of the moon.
for a moment I was like, they know that the dark side of the moon isn't always dark, right? It's just the side we can't see from Earth.
That's true.
And,
I forgot about that.
and then they like had him actually break out, so I was like, okay, but like why bring him then? I mean, I guess there's less collateral damage. We could have just like buried him in a volcano, especially since we already have a volcanic eruption.
Yeah.
And
well, see, he also he jumped into a volcano. Was he not out of the sun
why did he
during
jump
that?
into a volcano?
Like
did
he lose his powers?
Freezes Superman in an ice cube, pushes him into space, and then the next thing he does is go like erupt a volcano.
He's just causing havoc. He's just trying to hurt people. But would he not lose his powers in that instance? You know?
Arguably, yeah.
Like
I don't know. The whole thing with him is really, really dumb. It's astoundingly stupid. Everything about Nuclear Man is
the claws are awful. The just complete all over the place of his powers is dumb. The fact that he gets the hots for Lacey and Superman figures that out after his hiatus somehow doesn't make any sense.
There are like 3 kind of information skips at the very end of the film.
The end is so weird.
Superman, when we see Clark sick because of the scratch on his neck, he's clearly just like got a really, really bad cold or flu. Like it's clear that he's down and out, but he's just like he's suffering in a very normal amount of like an infection kind of way, right? The next time we see him, he's aged 50 years, has a bald spot and gray skin and wrinkles, and he like can barely get to a crystal to reactivate its power, which apparently just gives him his strength back.
Yeah,
like that's the whole thing.
This last blast of Krypton energy, something or other, blah blah blah. Who cares?
Gives him his strength.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense that it would hurt him. It doesn't make sense that would heal him. It doesn't make sense that he'd wait a week to do that. You know, like when were you gonna decide that this was a good time to maybe try to get your powers back?
And then like there's a kind of a very weak explanation as to why Nuclear Man wants to go after Lacey. He saw a picture, thought she was cute, decided to go for her. Awful. And Soups just knows that and shows up exactly where he's gonna be to confront him and knows what he's after.
Yeah.
And enough to like just say you're not gonna get her, and they both know who he's talking about, which is ridiculous. And then the whole fight sucked between the two of them.
Oh, it does. Because it really does.
The choreography is bad. Like if they played it
the
more
effects
like
are bad, and the choreography is bad, and
if they played it more like a cat and mouse scene rather than like a full on brawl, I feel like they might have had a little bit more for them, because we've already seen Soups and Nuclear Man fight it out like fist to fist, right? Yeah. We've seen like the boxing match between the two of them. So Superman should approach this situation with an intellectual strategy rather than just classic fighting. Like he knows the weakness now. He's at least been able to see at least some of it. Why is he not? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
He just gets lucky. Like he kind of tricks him into an elevator, but also like, why would you wait for him to get there? Like whatever. Yeah, it's just, I honestly just, I know that they have to come up with, you know, convoluted ways to make a villain be able to stand up to Superman, but him being scratched and getting a nuclear radiation poisoning thing, I think is dumb. You know, like I saw on IMDb that maybe it was a kind of potential reference to how in The Dark Knight Returns, Superman is weakened by taking a nuke to the face. I still don't fully buy that, because like you can't. I look. I understand it's comics, okay? You can't tell me that nuke anything is gonna hurt Superman when he, on every other occasion, will be in the sun. He's flown into the sun. He goes into the sun. Like, God, like, what's the nuke gonna do? You know what a nuke is compared to the sun? It's a silent fart. Like, it's nothing. It's nothing. So The guy that can
Yeah.
fly so fast he could literally travel through time has radiation poisoning? Bitch, please. Please. It would have been way cooler, and I didn't do this while watching because I didn't think this movie's salvageable. I don't think as it's presented there's anything in this that could be worked around, pieces that
You could
could be
take the
moved.
premise and do something with the premise, but you'd have to completely gut the inside. Like
Yeah,
you
it
could
just
do a plot line about Clark selling the farm and feeling like not tethered to Earth, or maybe feeling more
maybe
alien to Earth. You could do a plot line about Superman and nuclear weapons. You could do a plot line about the Daily Planet being taken over. You could do all these things in the same film because they do complement each other really well. But you'd have to rewrite all
yeah,
of the
something.
actual scenes
Yeah.
to actually be something. You have to rewrite the villain arc because Lex is so frustrating in this film. He's always frustrating. But I mean, like, okay, real quick, I never got the impression that Lex. Well, I mean, I guess in these films, Lex does kind of talk about Superman as an equal. He's like, finally, a challenge for my genius or whatever, right? Which is ridiculous because he's really not that smart. He just says he can do things and he can because plot. But he at this point where he's talking to Superman and he's like, "You're the only one that could keep up with me," right? Which, if that's true, we should see Superman do more clever things
Exactly.
while
Yeah,
fighting.
like in Superman
I do
2.
think I think they present this Superman as an intellectual Superman. He's not just here strong and muscly to stop things. He can actually think through situations and
Yeah.
he's clever, right? Like, so let's use more of that, especially in this situation where it's supposed to be more of an intellectual problem, but instead we're just gonna fist fight. That's fine, whatever. But then he drops two Shakespeare lines that are basically homoerotic.
Oh.
Yeah, he says, "Good night, sweet prince," which is what Horatio says to Hamlet, and there's a pretty big idea that Horatio has a crush on Hamlet throughout the entire play. And like the way that he refers to Hamlet, Horatio, is like Hamlet's dying, and spoilers.
Oh no.
Hamlet's dying, and Horatio is like, "I cannot bear to be in this world without you. Let me drink some of the poisoned cup so I can go with you wherever you're going." And Hamlet knocks the cup out of his hand, and that's when Horatio has to say goodbye to him. And he uses language that people would have associated with like lovers at the time to say goodbye to Hamlet. And then it's not like there are any sort of relationship, but Horatio is one of Hamlet's closest confidants throughout most of it, and Hamlet is extremely intellectual. So what's weird to me is, one, that if he understands the play at all, Lex would associate himself with Horatio and not Hamlet. But I guess he does see Superman as the one who's dying in that situation, so maybe it kind of works. And then he drops a line from Romeo and Juliet. He says, "Parting is such sweet sorrow," which, again, people just generally use, but combined with the "Goodnight, sweet prince" line is just straight up he's saying goodbye to a lover.
That's something you'd expect from the Joker to Batman, not Luthor to Superman. Like, they do not, I mean, it's so past the moment, but they do not illustrate Lex Luthor's hate of Superman in this.
No,
He does. It is more cat and mouse toying with him, silliness. You do not feel the just anger, the disdain. It's just not there because he's a character out of an Adam West Batman episode, and Superman, all credit, is being portrayed masterfully by Christopher Reeve. So yeah, it's just, there's definitely a disconnect in tone and perspective and, I don't know, comic genre of these two.
I just don't know if they want me to think of Lex as a smart guy or not, because most of what he does is very bumbling fool.
Yeah.
And then he drops lines like this, which indicate that he either does not know the context of these lines, or he does and he is indicating something that has not been established in this franchise, I don't think. Like, even if Lex sees Superman as a challenge that he's appreciative of, I do not feel like he ever really thought of the world as, like, it's me and Superman, and that's the only two people that matter in this world. Like, he's trying too hard to kill Superman, if that's the case. It would be far more of, like, a Joker-Batman situation to be like, you won't kill me because of your morals, and I'm not going to kill you because it's too fun to keep you
Yeah,
around.
exactly.
Like that kind of twisted thing. But that's clearly not what Lex is doing in these
No.
films. So, like, I don't know. They were so inconsistent with his character, and it really ends up messing up most of these movies, like the
Mm.
way that they use Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating.
Yeah. It it is. It really is. It's exhausting, honestly.
Yeah. I will say, I feel like this film, like the other films, even though it has some pretty glaring problems, it does create a kind of base for what we know of Superman today. Like Superman being involved in, the UN, making an
Mm.
address to the UN. You see that in a fair amount of Superman stories today.
Mm.
You see the conversations around Superman being an alien versus Superman as a resident of Earth. Like, do we consider him an Earthling or do we consider him a Kryptonian? Is he both? You have conversations around, like, Lois and journalism and truth and integrity. So, like, there's a lot that I feel like this franchise does kind of get credit for in terms of establishing character, but I feel like the execution of a lot of
Yeah.
these films is just not where I would want it to be.
Right. And
Maybe
it's a
it gets a pass a little bit
shame.
for
Yeah.
being earlier in terms of superhero stories. It is a pretty early superhero film. Like, it's probably
Sure.
one of the first. But it's just not what I want it to be, man.
Mm.
Like, I could forgive a few flaws, but all of the third acts have been genuinely terrible. This one was like a new level of bad for this franchise, but
Yeah.
all of them have been rough.
Yeah. I mean,
So
it really is just a downward, consistently downward slope. I was thinking
I
about it a
think
lot
that
watching
you
this
could
one. Which
argue
one?
Superman 2 maybe kind of edges out Superman 1, but it's not
Uh,
as classic, so maybe not.
yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
For me, it's because Superman is not acting like what I would say Superman is. Um,
Sure.
but I was trying to think while watching this because there were some things I found a little more enjoyable to watch at first because I hated the Richard Pryor stuff so much from 3, but
Hmm.
it's definitely worse just in the end. It's so
Yeah,
bad. It's so
yeah.
bad. But it's also the last one is not much better. Like it's very comparable in how awful it
Right.
is. And I think it's a real shame just because
Mhm.
of I mean who like a little bit of studio interference whatever, but the fact that I don't of the 3 most popular superheroes in the world, only I would argue Spider-Man has movies that in which the bad ones have people that argue are hidden gems or have things that are like better than people give them credit for.
Sure.
Whereas Superman and Batman have real, legitimate stinkers, just hardcore, awful, and it's so shocking to me. But I guess in a
Hmm.
way it makes sense because where you're gonna start with superhero movies, you're gonna start with the most popular ones, and when you're gonna start with superhero movies, you gotta get out the kinks, find the
Hmm.
glitches, figure out what tone works, and blah 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 blah. Because by the time Captain America rolled around, they kind of knew what to do, and there are no
Hmm.
bad Captain America movies. So I'm just rambling now because
It's
I
not
don't have any.
amazing.
What?
I mean, like, let's be honest, a lot of these early nerd films are not great films.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that they came first and that people liked them, and that's why we have good films now. But a lot of these early films are not great.
Yeah.
And it's genuinely kind of awesome the success rate of an MCU film. Because, not every single one of them is a perfect film. In fact, a lot of the films have some significant issues. But the fact that when you watch them, they're good entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
They're solid stories. The casting and the acting and the directing are usually pretty on point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's a lot of superhero films to be
Yeah.
doing really well on. And more or less, they are fairly interconnected. Like, there are definitely some dropped balls here and there,
Yeah.
but for the most part, the MCU has a really high success rate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I don't know, maybe just take a moment to appreciate it,
Oh, I
because
do, because
making a superhero film is apparently
yeah,
quite difficult.
I do watching these movies does make me remember to appreciate that, you know, we should not take for granted the kinds of
Hmm.
projects we get sometimes from the MCU.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just not also not just the scope of the characters we get, but like the depth of their adaptations sometimes. Like by the
The
time
consistency
Agatha,
between the stories, for the
yeah,
most part.
I think by the time Agatha came along, definitely before that, people had just kind of been like not surprised when an obscure character is adapted and done well, but like, dude, Superman didn't make it a trilogy before his films went to shit.
Hmm.
That's the other part though that I do find shocking. Because I know you have your reservations on the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans. But like
I do.
Superman 1, Batman 89, and Spider-Man 1 are all really, really solid for what they were, what they needed to
Hmm.
be, and honestly, in lots of ways, the tech they introduced, like the style, the
Hmm.
method of adapting a superhero movie. The fact
Sure.
that they get worse afterwards is what I find so frustrating. Like, you just showed me that you know how to do it. Why did you drop the
I
ball?
have a theory. I have a theory about that. I think it's connected to like all forms of art. Usually, I don't even want to say the first one, but like the breakout work of an artist or an author or something usually feels leagues better than the average work that they turn out. And I think it is specifically because of their breakout work. Let's take Hamilton, for example. Lin-Manuel Miranda has been around. He is, by the time he wrote Hamilton, he was an experienced composer and performer and lyricist. He wrote, like, what's it, On the Block or something like that?
No idea.
In the Heights, that's what it's called. Gosh. In the Heights. And people have revisited that since Hamilton, and they're like, oh yeah, this is has all the marks that we really liked from Hamilton, and it was out before. We just didn't really know it existed before Hamilton, right? But he took, if I'm not mistaken, 7 years to write Hamilton.
Damn.
He read the book, was so impacted by it, and spent years working through the entire thing, comparing it, writing songs, cutting songs, changing the lyrics. It was he genuinely put a lot of time and effort into it, and you can tell because Hamilton is a masterpiece. I know musicals aren't really your thing, but like it's like top tier theater, like easily the best thing to come out of theater in maybe my lifetime. Um, and his other work since has been mostly what he's released Disney things. Like
Mm-hmm.
he worked on Encanto and Moana. Both of them are good, but they're not as good as Hamilton. They're not. And like they feel like a cheaper version of Hamilton, and it's literally just because they got a successful songwriter to join their project, but their project had a deadline of like what, a year for him
Mm-hmm.
to work,
Right.
and so people like tend to get pretty critical of sequels or works that happen after the breakout work, and I think it's a very literal, very grounded reason as to why sequels and secondary works tend to not be as good as the first. And it largely has to do with because the first one had to do the work to prove that it could happen first.
Mm.
People had to go through several drafts in order to be like, this is a viable idea. And by the time you actually start working on the project, the creator of the project has already kind of edited out a few of their ideas and streamlined what's going on. But then that first product is very successful and they're like, hey, let's do a second one. You have to generate an idea for a second one, polish out all the ideas, edit it, and get it to that same level of goodness in less time. And I feel like that is very much a part of why sequels tend to be worse than first movies. I don't think it's universally true necessarily. I can think of a few situations where it's a little different, but I think for most of the time, the reason a sequel is not as good as the first one is because it is somehow derivative. obviously by its very nature, it's at least a little bit derivative, but it's like they had to cook up a secondary idea that fits within the ideas of the first one, and they have less time in which to proof the story, is essentially how it goes down. And there can be good sequels with that model, but more often than not, they're going to cook up a slightly less good movie simply because you have less time to do it.
Well, yeah, but see, then I think just the answer to my question is it's just capitalism and laziness. Like it's studio interference in the end. Because like I understand your comparison with Lynn, but I don't think it's entirely fair to compare Hamilton and Encanto. They're doing different things, you know? Like if he made a sequel to Hamilton and it was just so notably worse, it'd be like, Lynn, what are you doing, man? And then you could be like, well, he spent 7 years on one, he spent one on the other. Like, I get that. But I am stuck in the like slamming my fist on the table of like, no, that's not how this works. If you get like, because Superman 1 being good is after the work, yes, whatever, but then it only makes sense that the first one in many ways is the rough draft of or the first outing, and you set the foundation. You now know how to do it, especially if you are in a situation where the sequel wasn't that bad. Like you actually made a good one. You know, like you know what to do. So yes, it's capitalism and it's laziness and it's greed and studio interference, but it's just I find it weird even from a studio interference perspective of being like, yeah, this stuff worked, so let's just not do that again. Like, why? Stop interfering. Go, just let the nerds make their movies, because that's how we get stuff like Thunderbolts.
That's true. Passion projects are always the ones that tend to turn out most interesting. I don't know that, with the exception of some, like a lot of the MCU, I don't know that sequels are ever anyone's passion project.
I guess. I suppose. It's annoying. I want better for Superman. At this point, Superman, the movie, the new one has come out. I hope it's really good.
Same. I'm really hoping, because I need some good Superman content, guys. I'm dying.
Yeah, because hot take. Other than the first Superman movie and some of the cartoons, we don't really have any. I mean, I've heard Superman and Lois is really good. I'm currently watching it. I don't know for sure, but
yeah. No, I agree. I think Superman in general is done poorly, which is a shame. I mean, he is admittedly a bit of a tricky character to adapt because of all of his abilities. Like, it's hard to throw obstacles in Superman's way, you know?
Yeah, well, I think it's worse when you add shit like he can look at walls and they reform. Like, we didn't even talk about that. Why we add new, weird, stupid powers? Like, Superman has a lot of weird powers in the comics. Fine, but like you can just establish a certain set of them, you know? Like I think the best example of evil Superman is Omni-Man. He's like one of the most robust, one of the strongest. He doesn't even have all the powers and he's an absolute powerhouse, and they still in that world come up with a perfect combination of comic book mumbo jumbo convoluted and like believable things to like slow him down, to deal with him. I also understand that Omni-Man is 60 years after dealing with Superman, but so
he has the advantage of experience, or the writers do.
Yeah, kind of, but it's also like, you know, you don't have to say he's strong enough to move the fucking moon. You know, you don't have to do that. That's not really a rule. I would honestly argue, when you put it all on paper and you don't do like Superman Prime, or you know, he has the powers to fight God or whatever, it's harder to write for Flash, because there's honestly, if Flash is Flash and Flash can do the things Flash does easily, there's no reason that Flash should ever lose a fight ever. Whereas Supes is a little different, you know, like his natural ability isn't on that same level all the time. He can't move at the speed of an auto second, or whatever the hell Barry called it in that one comic book panel. So, as we said last week, the cartoon Superman the Animated Series was brilliant in how they introduced villains that could be going up against Superman and mess with him. You introduce interdimensional imps, in which it's a battle of wits. You introduce the Parasite, in which his power is in ebbing and flowing and coming and going. You introduce shit like Bizarro, which we kind of did last movie, but not really. There's cool things you can do. And
what you do is, because Superman is so powerful physically, you can shift the conversation from, I have to take this guy down with my fists, to how would Superman approach this situation? So if there's, some people robbing the bank, Superman doesn't have to pull out a gun and try to stop them from killing people by killing them. He can just show up, wrap a lamppost around them, crush their guns, and haul them to the police station, because he's not threatened by them. So his approach to his villains should be fundamentally different. Now, we still definitely want to throw him some Titans, right? We want him to fight the aliens that are more or less at his power level, or maybe there's someone with a power set that does kind of stop him a little bit, like some sort of electricity thing, there are ways to give him a physical fight that is difficult for him, and we do want to see that every now and then. But we also want to see the unique element of Superman, which is that he is not physically threatened by a lot, and so he can approach the situations with more consideration and more thought than the average person can. He's not a vigilante because he just can't stand by and let things happen. He's a vigilante because it's just so easy for him to do it. And so, kind of like you were saying, the whole responsibility thing, with great power comes great responsibility, for him, it's on a whole other level. And for us to ignore that, if we're going to do a Lex Superman clone situation, let's have a Young Justice storyline where Clark has a hard time ethically coming around to the idea that someone cloned him, and he might somehow be responsible now for that individual. And so he has an ethical dilemma that causes conflict between him and the kid, and it's also a personal challenge for Clark to get through. He has to come around to the idea of it's not the kid's fault. Let me, maybe, if I'm not going to be a parental figure, I could at very least, help the kid out every now and then. There are interesting things you can do with Superman that you can't do with other characters because of his power set. And people's response to Superman and narratives has largely been, let's just give him someone to fist fight, someone that can take a punch. And that's not what I feel like the story is supposed to be.
I think I know that there are some comics where they got lazy in that Superman can just basically do anything, and that was just a thing that happened. But I think it's kind of its own lazy to say that Superman is just boring, because that's so. That's I don't believe in that, because well, because you got stuff like Spider-Man, right? When you get down to it, the stuff that he faces, he's always pulling his punches. It's easy for him to take out a lot of the stuff he fights. And they come up with lots of stuff for him to be, dealing with. There's lots of stuff that Superman has in a similar way, which is, for some reason, we never get that in the movies. Because across the literature, there are lots of interesting things for Superman to deal with. But we never bring those forward. We're going to do... we're at the end here. So, 'Tis Not a Whale. And we are officially adding Man of Steel. So we are, while we are going into a place where I think the movies do get better, kind of, we're dealing with punch 'em ups and real estate again. So,
yeah, woo,
yeah,
so excited,
yeah,
it'll be good. I think having that perspective going into Gunn's Superman will be interesting.
Well, so. I am genuinely excited for Gunn's Superman, but I almost wish, after all this especially, and the next two, I almost wish that Luthor wasn't the villain, at all. He wasn't even involved.
I love a good Lex Luthor, though. If they do him right, I will be so happy.
My biggest and first exposure to Luthor really was the Justice League Unlimited world, and I've never encountered a Luthor that even came close to his level of intimidation, intellect, prowess, all of it. None of them have. I've been disappointed by every other Luthor that I've come across. Every single one.
Small note, I feel like Young Justice, Lex Luthor is up there.
That's fair. Yeah, I would say that's like
Yeah.
an offshoot of that kind of. That's fair.
Fair.
I will amend
Fair.
that. But yeah, that's fair because like I saw one of the Luthors in a clip from the Flash world crossing over. It's like the one of the brother from 2.5 Men, which was weird. The Luthor and All-Star Superman movie is so cocky and arrogant that he can't believe that Clark and Superman could ever be the same person. They're all so dumb, and then don't even get me started on Jesse Eisenberg. Huge fumble. Huge. Anyway, we're out of time. Not a whale. Not a whale.
Radioactive whale carcass, maybe.
Yeah. All right, we're done. If I can get over there. What the heck? There we go.